Hi, I'm Jody Hand, Mrs. Hand Painted, and in today's video I'll be showing you how to paint these really colorful and bright poppy flowers in a loose style. If you haven't painted these before, they're really fun and so bright and colorful, and they turn into a really great finished piece if you paint a whole field full of them. So I'm just going to show you the basics of how to paint these loose flowers, and if you paint them, I'd love to see them. Why don't you tag me on Instagram with my handle Mrs. Hand Painted and have fun painting with me today.
Hey guys, welcome back. I am going to be showing you how to paint a loose style poppy today, just like one of these. Alright, so I have got my supplies here. I have a test pack of this Artistico by Fabriano paper. I'm not sure, I think this is the traditional white one that was in there. I've already used the other 3 sheets that were in this pack. I got this from Jerry's Artarama. They have some buy it, try it deals, and a lot of different art suppliers will have test packs or sample packs of paper that you can try out if you're not sure and don't want to buy a big pad that's more expensive. Just try out, so that's something to try. So I've got that for my paper. I have a Silver Brush Company Black Velvet size 10 round brush. I've got my water bucket for rinsing my brush out, and I've got a towel because we have been kind of low on paper towels, so I'm trying to conserve those. And that's just for drying my brush off. And I've got my super messy palette, which I'll be using that little red spot right there. And I've got my Daniel Smith watercolors, and the colors we'll be using today are this Pyrrol Scarlet, Indigo, and I either use like the sap green or the Undersea green for the leaves and the buds. So whichever greens you've got, but you want to pick kind of an orangey red, and then a deep blue, or you can mix up a black with a blue to make a navy type of a color, or you could just use black too. So whatever you have on hand, it doesn't have to be the Daniel Smith colors, but you just want to find a more warm red that's more on the orange side if you want to get that true poppy color. Although some poppies are more of an orange and red, there's pink poppies, so you could do this in any of those shades. I could also use that Mayan orange that I have on my palette, but I really like this Pyrrol Scarlet for this. And then I'm going to go ahead and just use my palette here that I've already got, just a ceramic plate that I've got. And I'm going to start out by just getting some of the Pyrrol Scarlet. And you can make this as concentrated or as diluted as you want. So we're just going to do a whole page of poppies here and just practice poppies. And I recommend using these more natural hair brushes or ones that are softer bristles instead of something that's a little more snappy, just because I feel like you get a nicer looking flower for loose style flowers when you use these natural hair brushes. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead, get my Scarlet color, and I'm going to kind of turn my brush on its side like this, not straight down, on the side, so that I can get my first petal. And then I'm going to go from that same point and just kind of make a circle or oval blob shape. And then I'm going to go from that same starting point and stroke up, and then I can add another little wisp there. So that was just a simple loose style poppy, and I could make them smaller using this same big brush. If you wanted to go even smaller, just use less pressure. There we go, that one looks a little better. And you can kind of vary it up. You can leave some more spacing. But you just want to do a few simple strokes. And I'm not going to do the centers quite yet because I want these to get about halfway dry. Not all the way dry, and I don't want them to be so wet because then when I go to add my centers in, it will just bleed across the entire thing. So I want it to be about half of the way dry. And when you're using cotton paper, it does take longer to dry than if you're using a cellulose-based paper. So you can try it out on different types of paper and just experiment with how long it takes your paint to dry on that type of paper. But you will have better results with a cotton paper when you're doing this type of a technique. There. And as I'm getting down to the the end of my paint here. I'm getting a little more diluted, so they're not as vibrant or strong, so that's okay. I'm getting lots of variation in my poppies here. And here I was kind of, didn't give enough pressure, so I've got a little bit of a white gap there that I didn't really want. You can kind of just vary them up. So I've got lots of different shapes of poppies here. I'm gonna rinse my brush. Thing I will note with this type of brush is that it does hold a lot of water and paint. So you do want to dry your brush off before you get a lot, otherwise you'll get lots of drips and it'll be full and they might get a little bit too wet and it take longer to dry. So I always just try to dab my brush off on my towel as I'm using this style of a brush. And it does hold a lot of water, and you will want to rinse it really good because that paint will settle back here close to that ferrule. And you'll notice that here I wipe my brush off and I still have a little bit of that red. So give it a really good rinse. There, now I've got it clean. That's why I kind of like having a white towel, just so I can see that I got all of my paint out. All right, so I already had some indigo on my palette when I was doing these last night, so I'm just going to go back into that same. Like I said, that does hold a lot of water, so that's not super concentrated. I might just get a little bit more. I've been painting a lot of poppies, so I've got indigo green and my scarlet color. All right, and I'm just going to take a look, and if you're not sure how wet they are, you can always just kind of turn your paper with the light, and you can see the sheen of the water. So these ones, I didn't have as much, so they're drying almost a little faster. Now you have two options for the scent. You could do a center in your poppy, and I'm just kind of with the very tip of this, just kind of dabbing into that wet paint and just going a little bit at a time to see where it spreads. I don't want to put a big blob in the middle because it will spread really far, so I just kind of dab really lightly. You can also go right along the bottom edge. And this one I'll go in the middle. We'll do middle here. Maybe this little one I'll just do a tiny little dab along the bottom. So I'm just using that very fine point just to make a little oval center. Now, if you say you went into your paint and your brush does not have a really good point on it, like it's all flattened like this, one way you can get your brush back to a point is to hold it very lightly and just kind of go back and forth like that on your palette, and that will bring it back to a point. So this one, I'll go back in the center for this one as well. And I'm just dabbing lightly and watching where it goes. Here we go. All right, next we'll do some buds and stems, and I'll show you how to do a leaf. All right, and I had, this was kind of a mixture of some Undersea green and sap green left over on my palette, but anything that's kind of a more olivey green color or a darker green, you could just use whatever green you like. All right, so I want to get that back to that nice tip, go back and forth, get me my nice point on my brush. And if I were going to be doing these like in a little field, I could vary up the direction of the stems, but just barely going right up to the edge of it without touching it, so I don't bleed any green into my red. And I'm just making really thin, tall stems. And if you don't like using these bigger brushes for these thin points, just switch to whatever brush you feel comfortable with. Use a size 1 or a 0. However, it will not hold as much paint, so you'll have to go back into it a bunch of times. And if you lose your point, you can just go back on your palette and just move it back and forth again. I'm just going to make some small little stems here. Okay. I'll give you some good practice. Alright, so now we want to try a little bud. And poppy buds are kind of just like an oval. And since they're so heavy, they just kind of hang down. So you can do buds just like that. I'm just kind of making an oval, going from the top like a hook. Here we go. So you could do that across your painting and kind of vary up the types and sizes of poppies. You could have some that have This would be more like a side view, so you're not seeing it, you're seeing that center from the bottom of it. And here the poppies open and turn more toward you. Now there's lots of different variations you can try out and add them to your paintings. So have fun painting some poppies, and if you made some and want to share it, I'd love to see them. You can tag me on Instagram, Mrs. Hand Painted, and make sure you subscribe because I'll be adding lots of new tutorials in the coming future.